Monday.
All is well with the world. There's a cow in the middle of the road somewhere. Wonder what its name is. Anyway, hope all is well. No accidents happening. It is 10:05. Kay Adams with you till 12 on BBC Radio Scotland. Thanks very much for getting in touch on our conversation on the phone in this morning about whether politics and the world of show business should collide. Some are saying to exclude politics is a luxury of the privileged who have never had to fight for their right to simply exist. Do you think Palestinians can ignore politics? Their entire existence and identity is literally banned from public events like Eurovision. No flags, no cultural symbols. Marion says, regarding the public vote for Israel, there's a strong possibility that there was a considerable boycott by many of the public due to the inclusion of Israel in the competition, and therefore the result was not a true representation of the support for Israel. And Ian in Wick says it's always been political, not about the quality of the songs. It is about who is supporting who. You can keep your thoughts coming in. 80295 is the text number. Coming up, we're going to be changing the tune on music and mental health with Lauren Maybury from Churches.
I can kind of track like a mental health timeline of that album era, because I'm like, okay, you were doing something you thought was fun and then it got weird.
Yeah, Lauren will be joining me very shortly, and we'll be having another session of Where is Simon?
I've just arrived at
Your mornings just got better.
This year on BBC Radio Scotland.
Have I told you lately that I love you? Well, if I didn't, darling, I'm sorry. Did I reach out and hold you in my loving arms? Oh, when you needed me. Now I realize that you need love too, and I'll spend my life making up to you. Oh, I forgot to be your lover, and I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Have I taken the time to share with you all the burden that lovers bear? And have I done the little simple things to show you just how much I care? Oh, I've been working for you, doing all I can, but work all the time didn't make me a man. Oh, I forgot to be your lover, and I'm sorry, I'll make it up to you somehow, baby. I forgot to be your lover, gonna make it up to you somehow. Oh, I'm sorry, baby. I forgot to be your lover.
Which is probably the understatement of the world, and I do apologise to all music fans for saying that. She's quite something, isn't she? 12 minutes past 10. This is Kay Adams with you till 12 on BBC Radio Scotland. Now, as lead singer of Churches, Lauren Maybury from Stirling has been in the public eye since their hit The Mother We Share was released in 2013. But the spotlight hasn't always been a comfortable place to be, particularly in a digital world. And today, Lauren is joining forces with the launch of the Changing the Tune campaign with her colleagues from BBC Radio 6 Music. And I can see her now. She's locked in well, I was going to say a soundproof box. I hope it's not soundproofed. Oh, no. I'll unpress the mute button. Hi, Lauren. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good. And the sound is absolutely perfect, which is good. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Changing the Tune campaign?
Yeah, well, I guess end of last year, I was starting to go on tour for the first time with my solo shows, and Six Music had reached out about making a documentary that fitted within this campaign they've been talking about. And initially I was quite nervous to do it because I do feel like the social media downside conversation has been a big part of the church's narrative, and I was not keen to bring that narrative further on because we've talked about it so much. But the way they were talking about reframing it felt quite exciting to me. Talking about how can we, actually, how does this affect the mental health of artists? How does that actually feel, rather than it just seeming like we're all being whiny babies because we can't take a joke. And yeah, it's been really interesting hearing other people speaking on the radio shows that have been a part of it and how those things have worked for them has been very heartening to me somehow.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that you raise, actually, and it's a 15-minute documentary. Just to mention it, it's called I Change Shapes, and it's currently available on the BBC iPlayer that Lauren has authored. I have to say, I got a little sneak preview of it, Lauren, and genuinely, I thought it was wonderful. It's really a really powerful piece, and I've recommended it to lots of friends. I shared it to lots of people this morning. It's available there now, and it really, really did make me think. So we can talk a little bit more about that, but just picking up on what you said there, this kind of conflict of, well, if I talk about it, then you might get the whiny babies comment, which actually might make things worse. And so is the best thing just to say nothing? But then when you say nothing, it continues. So it's the original catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think when I was initially approached for it, I think I was really bratty to our manager, and I was like, I've been trying to not talk about this for the last 2 albums of Church's stuff because it just took up so much of the oxygen around it. It was the thing that people asked me about most in interviews. They don't ask me anything about the music because most of the time the assumption is either that the guys in the band do all of that, or that it's not as interesting to talk to me about that as it is to talk to me about online misogyny. And obviously, it's a very important conversation, so it was becoming very conflicting because I didn't want to add any more to the conversation that we'd already been a part of. But then it's happening anyway. So at least this time it felt like it was a constructive way to have that conversation, and it was handled with empathy, but also in a way that feels productive, that we're actually trying to have more than just the voyeuristic part of that conversation, I think. So... yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's 15 minutes, so it's kind of it's longer form. It's not in 40 characters or in a short burst or a soundbite or whatever, and I think that's really important for people who won't have seen it yet. And it's only been up since 6 o'clock this morning. What was the message that you were trying to convey in the I Change Shapes?
Well, I think it was important to us that we talk about all the parts of the story that fit with the Six Music campaign, and just show that is one part of a small part of a larger story. So show that there is a career outside of that, and there is a life outside of that, and there's a person outside of that. For every woman, queer person of color you see online receiving those kinds of things, there is a human being outside of that, and that is a very small part of their narrative. And yeah, it was like the people that made it, Hannah Curry, the filmmaker that made it, is like, she's so great. And I'd seen her film that she made with Michelle McManus, which touched on some of these similar themes. And it seemed like I trusted her enough to make it. Initially, I was like, I don't want to tell anybody anything ever again. I don't want to which is kind of sometimes like how I've come to feel about media stuff, which sounds, again, like you're being very sensitive, but it is just like psychologically, it's not normal to go into rooms with people and then them asking you to talk about some of the most harrowing things that have happened in your life. So sometimes I'm like, I would rather not, because it doesn't feel like a lot of the time, not that I don't trust people with that information, but if a dog has bitten you enough times, you don't pet that dog anymore.
No.
So yes, but Hannah, I really trusted with it. And I feel like when I watched it, I was like, yes, this feels representative of me, but also like it's a useful way to move that conversation forward, hopefully.
And I mean, at heart, you're a music artist. You want to make music and you want people to be listening to your music. How much does this conversation and your real experiences, it's more than a conversation, impact on your life as a music artist?
I think that's been the real thing I've had to figure out in the last however many years, was developing a kind of press persona, PR self, and kind of helping separate that away from my creative self, my real self, but somehow keeping those interlinked, because sometimes you do end up feeling like yeah, especially when every interview that was meant to be about a record is about harrowing things that happen to you on the internet, it does start to feel quite depersonalized and dehumanizing in some ways. But I understand that obviously promotion is part of a very privileged job, and I totally get that. But it was interesting. Sometimes I would sit and I would count in my head. I'd be like, I wonder how many questions about the actual record I'll get asked versus what the guys get asked. And it was an interesting bingo card sometimes.
Yeah, and that came through in the documentary. That there's a real gender difference, isn't there, in the way that you are responded to, that you're spoken about, that you're commented on, that you are appraised as than the guys that you work with in churches.
Yeah, I think so. And then to me, I've come to view that as there are very many positive sides of that. I used to get so frustrated when I was like, why don't they understand me? And why does nobody take me as seriously as this? And why, or not even seriously, but why am I immediately taken not seriously by so many people I encounter? But now I kind of feel like I spent a lot of time trying to be more like what I thought was seen as respectable about those people. And ultimately it is different. My experience is different. How I operate in the world, how I approach the world, how I see the world is different than what their experience would be. And that's not a bad thing either way around. We just have to try and be aware of each other and be empathetic. And I guess it seems crazy to have a campaign being like, we could all just be a bit nice. But I feel like that's kind. The point. Just be a bit nice would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, watching the documentary was really interesting for somebody of my age, obviously. So I'm a lot older than you, and there'll be lots of people listening this morning who are more kind of my vintage than you, Lauren. And funny, I was speaking to some friends about, you know, our experience of misogyny, sort of your age in the 80s. And, you know, it was much more overt, you know, in terms of comments and, you know, catcalling stuff. No, that sounds trivial, but I mean, it was much more out there, and you just almost had to kind of accept it. And in one way, you kind of think, well, it was worse then, and you always hope that things get better. But actually, when I was watching your documentary, when you see the covert nature of it, and the fact that it's almost kind of woven into the fabric of the responses that you get, and obviously the presence of the online thing, I thought, my goodness, I thought we had it hard. I think we had it better.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder, there's something about how insidious it is almost.
That's like, the word I was looking for.
I like my misogyny out in the open where I can see it and assess it and be like, and then move past. But it doesn't make the impact of it any less damaging, I don't think. But I guess that's the part of it is, I suppose in 2024, we would say gaslighting. But I do think that a lot of the last decade has been people kind of quietly gaslighting me out of the fact that those things are psychologically disturbing. Mm-hmm, so yeah. I don't know. As the new Taylor Swift lyric goes, like, "You'd never last an hour in the asylum in which they raised me." And like literally she writes a lyric being like, it would horrify them to see how disturbed this has made me. And I'm like, oh, Taylor. She speaks for it all once again.
Yeah, well, you expressed it perfectly. That's what I was trying to say. I mean, when it's out in the open, at least you can see it. But when it's insidious, it's, oh, Mike, what are you fighting? You're fighting shadows, and they're just absolutely everywhere. So just two things, because I know we're kind of running out of time. In terms of changing the tune, this is a campaign from BBC Radio 6 Music. I mean, how do we change the tune? Can we change the tune? How do we get past be kind, be nice?
Yeah, I don't know. I do hope that at least campaigns like this, they seem like they're trying to show the humanity of the people involved in that on all sides, because I do think that it's damaging for everybody that takes part in it. The people who are involved in the making of the negative comments, that's surely not coming from a positive place. You don't seem happy in your life. But even I find if I'm reading an article online and I see comments underneath it, or I see, you know, people being awful to other artists online, it makes me feel awful. I get the ick just being around it. And I feel like, you know, there are certain societal norms which we don't accept anymore, which we evolved out of. So maybe I kind of hope that now that we're this internet literate, we can evolve past some of the more caveman-y parts of how we approach that. And I don't know. I'm hopeful. I don't know. I don't know how to fix it, but I feel like at least it's a more constructive conversation than things feeling just a bit voyeuristic, I guess.
Yeah, and we at least, we need to keep moving, hopefully in a positive direction. And for you, as you say, you're doing your solo music now. So what are your plans now? I mean, have you left Chvrches? Are you?
No, the band is still together. We're still a unit. There is another Chvrches album we've signed on for. We don't have specific plans on when to start that, but we have. Everybody is on board and we're all excited about it. But for now, I'm just finishing up the solo record. So yes, I'm playing Great Escape in Brighton this weekend, and then there'll be more shows and the record down the line later this year, I think, is the hope. So yeah. And
is it different music, and is it a different experience for you to be a solo performer?
Yeah, I think that was the main thing I wanted to get out of it, was to push myself into a position where I had to be specifically the person in the driving seat of the creative, and just to try and get some different experiences. Because with the band, like, we've been lucky enough to have 4 records together and we know how well we work together, but I do think it was important for us all to go and to have different experiences and write differently, even start song ideas differently. And I think, I owed it to myself to give myself that opportunity, I think. So yeah, it's been very fun, and just trying to on tour or in the sessions really specifically try and set things up in a way that feels more supported and more conducive to good brain health.
Well, I would point people again to I Change Shapes, which is on the BBC iPlayer, and they'll probably get a much fuller kind of sense of what you're saying there, Lauren. But listen, thank you very much. It's been really nice to speak to you this morning. That's Lauren Maybury there.
Snow Patrol, the streets and pink, Orson and Block Party, Primal Scream, the Sugar Babes, the Zootons and the Kooks. Radio 1's big weekend is coming to Dundee. It's a great big party and it's absolutely free. The Chris Moyle Show, we're on our way to Dundee.
Seriously, do have a look at that documentary that Lauren Maybury has made, I Change Shapes, on the BBC iPlayer. It is well worth a watch. Still to come.
Just keep
Before 11, a breathing exercise, I should say. Of course, it is Mental Health Awareness Week, and expert Stuart Sandeman is going to be with us to take us through a bit of a stress reliever.
is everywhere on BBC Radio Scotland.
Right, just coming up to 10:30, so it's time to check in with Simon Calder, our travel correspondent, here to answer your questions as ever from 11 o'clock. Lines are open now, 08085 92 95 00. You can text 80295. And I know it's the highlight of everyone's day when Simon is coming on, when it's a Simon day, to say, where is Simon? Hi, Simon.
Good morning, Kay. I am at the UK's only international railway station. So to narrow things down a bit, it's unfortunately in London, not particularly convenient for Scottish travellers, and it's London St Pancras International. Very, very busy. I've just actually been along to Eurostar, which runs from here to Paris, Brussels and Amsterdam. They've got a big sign saying, we've sold all our tickets today. Come back another time or find another way of getting where you need to be. So clearly lots of demand for people to get abroad.
Yeah, I mean, as train stations go, Simon, I mean, I am, because we're at the beginning of summer, and I'm hoping in coming weeks that we're going to, connect up with you, and you're going to say, ooh, I'm in Reykjavik, or ooh, yes, I'm in Sao Paulo, or whatever. But yeah, as train stations go, St Pancras is actually a beautiful train station. And as you say, yes, it's a bit of a gateway. I know, and we're maybe going to speak about this a little bit later, Simon. I mean, I know that there are potential problems coming up in terms of the ease of travel on Eurostar.
Yes.
Let's park that for now. But just as you say it, I mean, what is the potential for that to really open up Europe a lot more? Clearly from Scotland, not that convenient, but from down there.
It's absolutely baffling, Kay. It has so completely failed to meet its potential. So it's been going for 30 years. And in that time, they've carried, I don't know, I'm going to say 200 million passengers, plus or minus a few million here. But compared with what they were expecting to do, it has come nowhere near meeting expectations. Yes, there are really serious problems that I was going to say emerged as a result of Brexit. We're very clear that they would emerge because of Brexit, but we went ahead anyway. But ultimately, you've got a monopoly provider, which I use extremely rarely, even though I'm always going to Paris, Amsterdam, Brussels, because they're great. But very often, I'm afraid to say, I will either fly or take the ship because the train is just too expensive. Typically travelling tomorrow, there's probably some seats, £200 one way for a 2-hour journey, and on top of that, you will have a obviously you haven't got the choice of getting to the airports, but if you've got many airlines which are saying, oh, that'll be 60 quid, then obviously a lot of people are going to do that instead. It's a great shame, and really
it's such a disappointment, because once you get into mainland Europe, their train services are generally great.
Yes.
I mean, the massive potential.
Oh, sure, yes. I'm actually, would you believe, I've got a meeting with the two greatest experts on European rail. That's Nikki and Susanna, the editors of Europe by Rail, which is a fabulous book. I hope it's on your bookshelf. It's certainly on mine. And they are going to tell me, I hope, about what can be done to open up Europe. They know more about it than anybody else. I mean, my experience is that if you've got competition on high-speed routes, such as Madrid to Barcelona, almost nobody flies these days. You've got 4 different organisations competing to take you on that. You can, if you plan ahead, you can get a ticket for about 10 quid. It's fantastic. And yes, part of the problem is that Eurotunnel, which is a separate organisation from Eurostar, which owns the tunnel, charges £17 as a toll, effectively, for every single passenger, which means that you are looking at 17 quid before you've even got on the train. So it's a shame, but hopefully by the time we come back, I'll have a few more answers from my from the experts. And if I had any interest at all in doing anything to do with travel, it's much easier, by the way, talking about travel and what should be done than actually doing anything. But I think bringing in a kind of EasyJet or a Ryanair of rail and just running really cheap trips through the tunnel could sort of rescue it. And then, well, can you imagine, we were told there would be trains running from Glasgow via Edinburgh and down through Yorkshire all the way direct to Paris. That never happened, and so many promises broken, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's such a shame. Well, I'll be really interested to hear when you come back, Simon, just about 11, what you've managed to glean from the people that you're going to speak to, because obviously a lot of people these days, environmental concerns, have got a real desire to travel and will to travel by train. So it'd be good to hear what the potential is. We might also talk a bit about Malmo. We've heard a lot about it in the Eurovision Song Contest. We can see whether you think that's a good destination. But whatever it is you want to talk to Simon about, whoever you want to get, wherever you want to get to, he is the man to advise. 08085 92 95 00. You can text him on 80295. Simon, speak to you very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
'78, if you were wondering. I was wondering when it came on. I was like, oh goodness, Leo Sayer, you make me feel like dancing. And I just had to have a wee look. 1978. Don't time fly. Now, more likely to struggle with mental health, less likely to ask for help. Time and time again, the stats tell us that many men are kind of stuck in this loop. Doing his bit to shift the dial is Craig Ferguson, who is walking from Scotland to Munich ahead of the Euros in aid of men's mental health charity Brothers in Arms. Hi there, Craig.
Hello, how are you getting on?
I'm fine. But more importantly, how are you getting on, Craig?
Yeah, no, I'm doing really, really well. I mean, the journey is now, 10 days in, and I've had the best time so far. So keeping it up and spreading awareness.
Well done. So how many miles have you covered?
So far, I've covered round about 200 miles. Of course, we've still got a long, long way to go to Munich, but, we've still covered a fair distance. It's funny because you don't think you've came that far until you zoom out on a map and you go, oh, Glasgow's all the way back there.
I know. Well, it's a heck of a walk. So how far is it in total?
So the total distance is just over 1,000 miles. Okay. I wanted to hit the 1,000 miles mark to say that I would walk 500 and 500 more.
Oh yes, yeah, very good, very good. And so, but you wanted to do this particularly to raise awareness of men's mental health and to support Brothers in Arms. Why did that mean so much to you? Yeah,
of course, and like you sort of touched upon in the intro there, I feel like it's such a big issue in the whole of the UK at the moment. There's some terrible stats, and like you said, the stats keep showing us that this is the biggest killer of men under 50 in the whole of the UK. It's male suicide, and if I can do this challenge, spread a little bit of awareness and positivity to show men that there's people out there who are willing to support you, and you're not alone in your struggles, then I'll be very proud of that.
Yeah. Well, we're also joined, Craig, by Colin McFarlane, who's the National Programme Director for YMCA Scotland. Morning, Colin.
Good morning, Kate. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning.
How are you?
And Dave Chauner's with us too, stand-up comic and author. Hi there, Dave.
Hi, yeah.
Both in awe, I'm sure, of Craig's efforts as he makes the trek 500 miles and 500 more down to Munich. Colin, why do you think we're stuck in the loop?
I think that's the $1 million question, Kay. As we're doing a bit of research, we've done some research, with our colleagues at YouthLink and a number of organisations. We surveyed around 1,250 young people in Scotland of all genders and none, and the stats were quite strange because it came across very positively. The young men had people to talk to, that they felt safe in their environment and didn't have a lot of the peer pressures that we thought they'd had. Mm-hmm. So there's something happening after that sort of early teenage stage as young men sort of grow and evolve into manhood that we're not quite sure that there's a change there. So the $1 million question is, what is that change and why are men beginning to struggle ever more so?
Mm-hmm. And what are your indications, or is this a bit of a mystery?
No, I think a lot of it is around where men feel their place is in society now. I think men are beginning to struggle with who they are and what they are, and society's changing so quickly that there isn't how the view that sort of men my age, I'm in my 50s now, of what was the normalised behaviour for me is completely and utterly different. And where men are beginning to struggle to actually manage being involved in society that way.
So, well, Dave, let me bring you. What are your thoughts on it? Why do you think we're kind of stuck a little bit? Because we are talking about men's mental health, that Colin says from research with younger men, they feel they can share a bit more, that they can speak to people more than perhaps in the past.
You see, I don't really think it's a case of reinventing the wheel. We know that blokes, time and time again, are told to talk. They're told to just talk about their mental health, which is great. But if you don't give them the skills to do that, how are they going to do it? I don't think that suicide is the biggest killer of blokes under 50 because they don't think to open their gobs. I think what we're doing is it's essentially like going to a blacksmith and saying, well, make me a horseshoe, and not giving them any of the tools or equipment. If you don't tell people how to talk about emotional regulation, how to understand emotional intelligence, then you can keep on saying just talk until the cows go home. But unless you actually give any directive of what you actually mean, nothing's going to change.
So how would we do that, do you think? By what means would we do that? And what kind of advice do we need to be imparting?
I think there's two things there. I think one is one of the things that's really pernicious about mental health is it's kind of like eyesight. You don't realise on a Tuesday morning, oh, I'm short-sighted. There are a couple of things that make you realise that you've reached that decision. So I think untangling this idea of emotion and mental health. So your emotions, like the weather, will change 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day. That's up until a point. Fair enough and quite normal. However, your mental health is your mental climate, and actually starting to pull back and get a little bit of perspective on that of going, have I consistently been down? Have I consistently been irritable? Have I consistently been isolated? That begins to help. And then there's really easy tools that you can do if you realize you are in that space of saying, okay, instead of saying, how do you feel? Say on a scale of 1 to 10, what number do you feel? 1 being rubbish, 10 being euphoric, or being a bit more kinesthetic with it and having a bit of fun with it and going, all right, if you had to describe yourself as a style of music, what style of music would you be? And that starts to give those communication tools and pry that conversation open.
Yeah, I think Ruby Wax uses something like that. I think she talks about, you know, when you ask people what's the weather like, so it's what's your mental weather like, and you know, she uses that as a kind of descriptor. Colin, do you think we need to be saying different things to men about mental health and how they regulate their emotions than we do to women? Is it a gender issue?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's a gender issue, because that then can polarise people in opinion. I really like Dave's point around, yeah, we can tell people to talk about things, but actually not having the skills and ability to do so can make it really, really challenging to be effective in those conversations. One of the things that we've been exploring is the perception of men in society, which seems to be this idea about toxic masculinity. Everybody seems to understand what toxic masculinity is, but when in the research we've done, is very, very few young men and people understand what positive masculinity is. So how do we help people reframe their view of what it is to be a man in modern society, and help men understand caring, sympathy, empathy, and that? Because lots of men that I engage with display these behaviours. But when you're continually seeing men portrayed in such negative aspects, that can compound men's feeling about where they are, who they are, what's their place, and how they perform in societal opportunities.
I mean, I guess, well, I don't know if you agree, Dave, that kind of comes down to, you know, we live in a very headline-grabbing world, and, you know, there are some clear examples of toxic masculinity that make shocking headlines, and therefore they get all the noise, whereas positive masculinity, and please don't think I'm being in any way derogatory here, probably isn't anything special, you know. It's just
That's great, because I know that will spark a headline as well. Isn't that funny that I know that there'll probably be someone listening, and I also think there's a
is it? Am I wrong?
I think there's also a really, and this is a horrible thing to say, and I cringe to say it, and I know I'll probably regret it, but I think there's a real mixed message here, because on the one hand, whenever we talk about mental health, there will be this idea of talk about it, open up, that's great. But then on the other hand, when you talk about so many other things, people will say, what do you know? You're a bloke. What do you know? You're a white middle-class male. What do you know? Shut up. You've had your time. And those are really conflicting messages. On the one hand, to say open up, then on the other, say, shut up. Men have had it good for a while. Shut up. Shut up. And I think that's something that we really need to look at.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, these are two different conversations which are actually looking at different issues, but they are colliding in a really unhelpful way for everyone.
Absolutely, and I think this is where, you know, sort of like, yeah, perhaps we're talking on the more feminist side. That's where I think, like, feminism could actually come through and try and help with this conversation. I do schools talks, and you know what? Young blokes now are so much more emotionally aware than I ever was when I was a kid. But I think what we need to do is actually try and not only reward and applaud that, but also go a little bit further and say, okay, so this is how you talk about emotions. This is how you regulate your mental health. These are helpful, pragmatic things that you can do in order to prevent you reaching crisis point, to prevent you having to need to use suicide hotlines.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're kind of stopping the conversation too soon, probably. On that note, we have to stop this conversation. Dave, thank you very much indeed, and also Colin McFarlane from YMCA, but particularly to Craig, are you still cooling off those steaming feet of yours, Craig?
Yeah, I'm just resting up before we've got another 22 miles to get in today, but I appreciate you having me on. Of course, it's great, spreading the message and stuff like that, so thank you very much.
Well, no, not at all. And Craig there is walking from Scotland to Munich 1,000 miles, and that's in aid of men's mental health charity, Brother in Arms, and I hope you get there in time for our huge triumph that lies ahead at the Euros, Craig, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. Massive game, so thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Enjoy the trip.
This May, live from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it's all happening in Jeddah. All hail WWE King and Queen of the Ring. It's all happening in Jeddah.
Oh, if I had a poster on my wall, it'd be Shuti Gatwa. Oh, absolutely fabulous. Or maybe Simon Calder. He's coming back.
I've just arrived at Europe's most...
Where do I go? Follow the river. Where do I go? Follow the gulls. Where is the something? Where is the someone that tells me why I live and die? Where do I go? Follow the children. Where do I go? Follow their smiles. Is there an answer in their sweet faces that tells me why I live and die? Follow the windstorm, follow the thunder, follow the neon in a young lover's eyes, down to the gutter, up to the glitter, into the city. That's where the truth lies. Where do I go? Follow my heart's beat. Where do I go? Gonna follow my hand. Where will they lead me? And will I ever discover why I live and die? I live and die. Why I live and die? I live and Where do I go? I got to know. Where do I go? Somebody tell me. Where do I go? Where can I go? Tell me where can I go? Where do I go? Where do I go? Where do I go? Tell me where to go.
Sing the mood there, taking us into our next item where we get the opportunity to catch our breath. It's Mental Health Awareness Week this week, and every day we're going to be joined by Stuart Sandeman as a breathing expert who's going to talk us through why it is so important to pay attention to our breath. Morning, Stuart.
Good morning.
Good
Pleasure to be here.
So we were just, I don't know if you heard earlier, we were just talking about men's mental health there, Stuart. I could see you sort of getting connected up. And it was interesting because all three guys were sort of saying, well, yeah, men are talking more, or more opportunity to talk, feeling more relaxed about talking, but it's how you then regulate your emotions. What do you do with that talk? And it's not always about talk, is it? I mean, it's about how you deal with emotions, and I guess that's where your work comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one thing talking about it, but it's also moving into action as well.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about this week, Mental Health Awareness Week, is encourages the openness to spark these conversations to then start to regulate how you're operating, how you're feeling, working through your different emotional states throughout the day, and recognizing how you're feeling to move through these different experiences in your life.
And how can breathing help us do that?
Well, the way our breath works is it's not only a tool to get air in and out of our body, but it's linked to how we're feeling. So the way you breathe, when we go through an emotional experience, what happens is our breath moves. Our breath moves to get us energy in our body. If we're feeling angry, well, our breath will move and it will flow, and then we have an emotional outburst. Or if we're feeling stressed or we're feeling upset, our breath will move as part of that emotional trigger. What we tend to do is then hold our breath to stop ourselves from feeling. So if we are feeling really stressed, well, we'll be holding our breath and creating tension in our body. If we are feeling very upset, but we want to hold it together because we don't think it's appropriate to burst into tears, well, we'll hold our breath to stop the tears flowing. Even the good stuff, if we feel like we shouldn't find something funny, well, we hold our breath back from feeling the laughter, feeling the joy. So our breath is not only a tool that regulates our energy levels, but it also is something that is part of our emotional process. So it's really good to understand, well, how are you breathing? And the link to our breathing in our nervous system, because different breathing patterns will trigger our brain and body into different stress responses or different triggers. So the more we understand the way we breathe, the more, because we can take control of our breath, we can then do something about it. And it can be a very, very quick, empowering tool to change the way we feel in any moment.
So it can be a mood changer.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Our breath can turn our stress to calm very quickly, our overwhelm to balance. If we're feeling distracted, we can find more focused states through our breath. So yeah, it's really starts with this first point, which is awareness, which is even now having these conversations, but not just awareness of mental health, understanding I'm feeling a certain way and I want to feel something different. Mm-hmm. So once we have that awareness, one of the quickest things we can do to feel something different is to change the way we breathe.
Well, listen, Stuart, you're going to join us every day this week in the Mental Health Awareness Week, which is lovely. And I don't want to get stressed and hit the news. So you're going to take us through a breathing exercise. So I'm going to hand over to you.
Amazing. Well, we're going to start off today. We are here all week. So today is really just about awareness, understanding where you're breathing right now. So this is the easiest thing I teach because we don't have to do anything. But it's often the most difficult because as we do nothing, I want you just to notice right now where your breath is flowing.